Who were the brain boys who led the Krorks during the War in Heaven? Could the orks within the time of M40 ever evolve back into the Krorks? That's the question I'm asking today. Is there a missing element, or do they just need to run into some boys who are hard enough? First, let's run through the basics so you can understand where this missing element comes into play. So welcome friends to another 40k video, and shall we begin? The origins of the orks lie within them being the Krorks back during the War in Heaven. They were created by the Eldari to aid them in their war with the Necrons. Over time, and we are assuming because they had no one tough enough to challenge them, they devolved into the orks we see during the time of M40. I also have to mention here we see a stronger type of ork, but not a Krork during the War of the Beast, which takes place after the Heresy, but when all the Primarchs have left. There the orks fought the Imperium using attack moons and displayed high intelligence and used advanced technology that they had created. They challenged the Imperium. The leaders of them were dubbed the Prime Orks, taller, bigger and smarter than the M40 orks, and the Imperium nearly fell. That and Ghazghkull Thraka, the leader at the time of M40, are the nearest we have to seeing the orks evolve up into the Krorks. And again, for context, here is little on the ork evolution and hierarchy. So what's that missing ingredient amongst the types of orks? They are the lowest of the low snotlings. They are a small, pretty much mindless subspecies, about as smart as a dog. They play roles such as looking after squigs, ork animals, and harvesting fungi. Then they have the higher forms of warlords of various levels that rule over the orks. The brain boys are that missing ingredient, but they are still around in a different form. And in Blade of Truth, a Farsight novel by Phil Kelly, we see who the brain boys are now. The ork, as you call it, is not the only creature in the Big L ecosystem. They are lesser creatures, smaller than infants in stature, and with the mind of beasts. But it was not always that way. He's referring to the snotlings. I assessed the gene markers of the diminutive orkoids, and there are part of their biosignatures that are missing. When regrown, when reconstituted, they result in drastically enlarged cerebellums. It is the theory amongst my foremost geneticists that the lesser orkoids were the leaders of their society. The warrior caste, the knowledge of how to propagate endless warfare, is hardwired into their genetic code. The same can be said of their innovators, their earth caste equivalent, said to be a subset of their warrior caste. By my current theorists' reckoning, the smaller, brighter creatures were once their leaders. The genetic markers are still there for great intelligence. They suffered some sort of cataclysm that saw them subsumed and their warrior caste rose to rulership in their place. Now this leads to the original source for this lore, the Warg, the Orks, a sourcebook released back in the 90s. Here we learn the legend of how the Brain Boys fell. This is speculated by Imperial scholars. Here is the full excerpt for you. A legend confirmed by the Tau as being maybe more. Imperial scholars have speculated that on the Ork world of origin, where that might have been, there existed an ancient race that was indirectly responsible for the spread of orkish society. Difficult as it is to believe, this ancient race was extremely intelligent and rose to dominance over orkish races in just a few generations. They understood and developed technology and even created the legendary and similarly lost Ork STC, Standard Construct Templates. It was this race, historians argue, that must have initiated the ork expansion into space. Now a physically underdeveloped slave race, these snotlings are thought to be the only living remnant of that lost race, the Brain Boys. The sudden rise of superintelligent snotlings can only be explained as a result of a catalyst. Snotlings are symbiotic with fungi, which they cultivate and eat. It is believed that these fungi grew in the underground cave systems of orkoid culture and caused genetic mutation in the brains of these ancient snotlings. The snotlings raised the fungi for food. Over generations, a diet of these fungi stimulated the growth of the snotlings to its full potential. Later, the fungi were cultivated by the mentally enhanced snotlings. According to legend, the intelligent race of snotlings known as the Brain Boys was still diminutive, so they bred a race of less intelligent, but tougher, larger, and more brutal creatures to do their work and fight their wars. These were the orks and Gretchen. Gretchen probably represents an intermediate stage in the development of orks. The orks were put to work cultivating the fungi. Unfortunately for the ancient snotlings, the orks also nibbled at the raw fungi as they collected it. Their masters took no notice, unaware that their own intelligence was the result of this peculiar diet. Over a few generations, the ork brain was enhanced enough for the orks to rise up and overthrow their masters. The boyz were enslaved and allowed only a small amount of fungi. Slowly, they began to regress to a juvenile level of mentality, even by orkish standards. However, the orks neglected the cultivation of the fungi, and eventually it died out. As the fungi became less abundant, the orks also began to regress. By this time, the greatest advances in orc tech, culture and expansion into space have already taken place. Gradually, the orks reverted back to a lesser mental capacity that was nevertheless superior to the original state of the boyz. Thus, they remained dormant. This is the situation that persists to this day. It is difficult to reconstruct this phase of orc history in any precise detail. Like most orc history, the story had to be placed together from fragments of orc legends, which have now only passing references to boyz and give only brief glimpses of a time when the orcs were not in control. With orc society now dominated by its strongest and most brutal elements, orc civilization is faced with a major problem: the maintenance of tech. The orcs have found the obvious solution in their use of slaves, apart from the mech boys, who are orcs with a residue innate talent for tech. Orcs rely on enslaved humans and other aliens in their worship and factories. More importantly, they rely on tribute exacted from vassal alien communities. This tribute is paid in the form of armaments and tech. Sometimes whole communities and planets are occupied by orc warriors, enslaved and put to work making armaments. After several vicious and destructive wars, many alien communities willingly manufacture equipment for the orcs as bribes to keep them away or as tribute to provide protection. So the lowest and smallest orcs, the snotlings, had once been the leaders of the Krorks, the boyz, though time brought them low. They were minds, and that still genetic potential is there. The missing ingredient to allow the orcs to fully evolve back into the Krorks, along with someone who can challenge them on that level, as they were challenged during the Warring Heaven. Perhaps an army of Primarchs or something like that, I don't know. At least that's my theory on this lore. What do you think? Would you like the orcs to go full Krork? Do you believe the legend? Have you crashed on Armageddon during a full orc wag? Let me know if you survive in the comments.